The hot afternoon sun hung over the crowded streets of Lagos, beating down on the dusty roadside where traders shouted over one another, buses blared their horns, and pedestrians hurried from one destination to another. Amid the noise and confusion sat a young man in worn-out clothes, his face hidden beneath a faded cap. His shirt was torn at the sleeves, his slippers were almost falling apart, and beside him rested a small cardboard sign asking for help. To everyone passing by, he looked like another homeless beggar struggling to survive. But beneath the dirt, the untrimmed beard, and the tired appearance was a man whose name had once commanded respect in elite business circles, Daniel Amodi. Daniel lowered his head as another crowd walked past without giving him a second glance. Some ignored him completely while others looked at him with pity before moving on. He had become invisible to the world, exactly as he intended. Just then, two elegantly dressed women stepped out of a nearby boutique carrying expensive shopping bags. Their laughter filled the air as they admired the designer clothes they had just bought. One of them suddenly froze. "Jessica! Jessica!" Cynthia whispered loudly, grabbing her friend's arm. Jessica frowned. "What is it again?" Cynthia pointed toward the roadside. "Look carefully. Am I seeing things?" Jessica followed her finger lazily before her eyes widened. No way. It can't be." The two women stared for several seconds. "It is him," Cynthia finally said, almost laughing. "Daniel Amodi." Jessica burst into laughter. "Impossible. Daniel. The same Daniel that used to walk around like he owned the whole world." "The very one," Cynthia replied, unable to hide her amusement. Daniel slowly looked up after hearing familiar voices. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, silence lingered. Then Daniel spoke calmly. "Good afternoon." Jessica folded her arms immediately. "He is greeting us?" Cynthia laughed so hard she almost dropped her shopping bags. "This one still has confidence." Jessica shook her head dramatically. "Look at him. The same man that used to reject every woman because he believed none of us was good enough." Daniel remained quiet. He recognized them instantly. Years ago, they had attended the same university. Jessica had openly admired him, but Daniel had politely turned her down because he was too focused on building his dreams. Since then, she had carried the rejection like a wound that never healed. Now fate had given her what she believed was the perfect opportunity for revenge. "You know what?" Cynthia said excitedly. "Let me record this." She quickly pulled out her phone. Jessica smiled wickedly. "Yes. The whole world needs to see what has become of Mr. Big Dreams." The camera began recording. Cynthia zoomed in on Daniel's face. "Everyone," she announced dramatically, "meet Daniel Amodi. The man who believed ordinary girls were beneath him." Jessica laughed loudly. "See where pride has landed you." Several people nearby stopped walking. Curious eyes turned toward Daniel. Within seconds, a small crowd had gathered. Some whispered. Others laughed openly. Daniel remained seated. He neither argued nor defended himself. Cynthia moved even closer with the phone. "Smile for your fans." Daniel gently raised his hand. "Please, turn off the camera." Jessica smirked. "Why? Are you ashamed now?" Daniel looked away quietly. "I simply don't want to be recorded." His calmness irritated Jessica even more. She reached into her handbag, brought out a small note, and tossed it onto the ground in front of him. "There." She folded her arms proudly. "Nobody should say Jessica is wicked." Daniel looked at the money for a moment before picking it up respectfully. "Thank you." His voice remained gentle. "God bless you." Those simple words somehow made Jessica even more uncomfortable. She expected anger. She expected insults. Instead, she received gratitude. "Let's go," she muttered quickly. People are beginning to stare. Cynthia laughed while saving the video. This one is definitely going online. The two women walked away still laughing, completely unaware that hundreds of people around them had watched the entire scene unfold. Daniel quietly folded the small note and slipped it into his pocket before lowering his head once again. A few streets away, inside a black luxury SUV parked discreetly along the roadside, another pair of eyes had witnessed everything. Daniel's personal assistant, Chuka, clenched his fist in anger. "Sir." Daniel slowly entered the vehicle after the crowd dispersed. Chuka could barely contain himself. "Sir, how much longer will this continue?" 3 weeks. 3 whole weeks. Every single day someone insults you. Daniel leaned back in his seat. "My back is still strong," he replied with a faint smile. Chuka sighed deeply. "Your back may be fine, sir, but the company is not." He handed Daniel a tablet displaying dozens of missed calls. "The board keeps asking where their chairman is." Daniel remained silent. "They are worried," Chuka continued. "The annual charity gala is only 9 days away. Every director expects you to lead the event personally. Investors from across Africa have already confirmed attendance. Nobody understands why the chairman has suddenly disappeared." Daniel looked out of the tinted window toward the busy streets where ordinary Nigerians continued chasing daily survival. "They will see me," he said quietly. On the 9th day, Chuka rubbed his forehead in frustration. "Sir, please come home. You have already proved your point." Daniel slowly turned toward him. "Have I?" His voice carried neither anger nor pride. Only sadness. "Tell me, Chuka, what exactly have I proved?" Chuka hesitated. Finally he answered softly. "That this city can be unbelievably cruel to a man who appears to have nothing." Daniel shook his head. "No." He stared at his reflection on the window. "Knowing something and seeing it with your own eyes are two different things." He paused before continuing. "My father started everything with a single roadside kiosk." His eyes became distant as old memories flooded back. "He taught me that wealth is only meaningful when it reveals people's true character." Daniel sighed deeply. "The day he died, every smile around me suddenly had a price." He smiled bitterly. People stopped seeing Daniel. They only saw Daniel's money. His fingers tightened slightly. "So I wanted to disappear. I wanted to know if anyone would still treat me like a fellow human being when they believed I had absolutely nothing." Silence filled the vehicle. Only the distant sounds of traffic could be heard outside. Chuka finally spoke. "And after 3 weeks." Daniel opened the small notebook resting on his lap. Inside were 2 columns. One was labeled cruel. The other was labeled kind. Under cruel were dozens of names. The pages were almost full. Under kind, nothing. Not a single name. Daniel stared at the empty column for several seconds. 3 weeks, he whispered. Not one person. Chuka swallowed hard. Maybe there simply isn't anyone." Daniel slowly closed the notebook. His eyes reflected both disappointment and determination. "No. There are still 9 days left. If I find even one genuinely kind soul before the charity gala, my faith in people will remain alive." He looked once more through the car window at the bustling streets of Lagos. "But if those 9 days pass and nobody shows compassion to a man they believe is worthless?" He took a slow breath. "Then I will finally stop looking." The luxury SUV drove away quietly, leaving behind the busy roadside where thousands of people continued their lives, completely unaware that the ragged beggar they mocked every day was one of the richest and most influential businessmen in Nigeria, and that their choices were silently deciding the future of fortunes, careers, and lives. The following afternoon, the busy streets of Lagos were alive with their usual chaos. Yellow buses competed for passengers, roadside traders called out loudly to attract customers, and the aroma of roasted corn, akara, and fried plantain floated through the air. Daniel remained seated in his usual corner beside the cracked pavement, dressed in the same worn-out clothes that had become part of his disguise. Dust clung to his trousers, and the afternoon heat had left beads of sweat running down his face. Yet despite everything, his eyes remained calm, quietly observing the endless stream of people who hurried past without sparing him a second glance. Not far away, Chuka watched discreetly from the familiar black SUV parked across the street. Every insult directed at Daniel tightened his chest with anger, but he respected his boss's decision to continue the experiment. Daniel had barely adjusted the cardboard sign beside him when a familiar voice called from behind. "At least let me bring you food that didn't come out of a gutter." Daniel looked up. Standing before him was Felicia, wearing a simple blue office blouse and black skirt. A modest handbag rested on her shoulder, and although her clothes were neat, they were far from expensive. Still, her bright smile carried a warmth that no amount of wealth could buy. Daniel smiled gently. A beggar eating restaurant food will expose himself. Felicia laughed softly. "You worry too much." She turned toward the nearby roadside food store. "Mama Kechi." The elderly food vendor looked up from the hot pan of frying akara. "Good afternoon, my daughter." "Good afternoon, Mama. Please give me akara for 200 naira and one sachet of pure water." Mama Kechi smiled as she wrapped the hot bean cakes in old newspaper. "My daughter, you are glowing today." Felicia's eyes sparkled. "I got the job, Mama." The old woman clapped excitedly. "Huh! Glory be to God. They finally called me yesterday. I start work on Monday." "I told you," Mama Kechi said proudly. "Good people never remain forgotten. God always remembers those who remember others." Felicia accepted the food with gratitude. "Amen." As she turned to leave, an impatient passerby frowned at Daniel. "Hey! Stand up and beg somewhere else. You're blocking the road." Daniel quietly lowered his eyes without saying a word. Felicia watched the exchange with disappointment before kneeling beside Daniel. "You haven't eaten today, have you?" Daniel hesitated. "No." She carefully handed him the warm akara and the sachet of water. "Here." Daniel stared at the food for several seconds. "Eat slowly." She smiled. "No one is chasing you." Daniel accepted it with both hands. His voice became unusually soft. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me." Felicia shrugged. "Do I need to know someone before I recognize hunger?" Daniel looked at her carefully. "My father always said." She paused as memories filled her heart. "When you find someone who has fallen, stretch out your hand first. The questions can wait." Daniel's eyes softened. "Your father sounds like a very wise man." A gentle sadness crossed Felicia's face. "He was." She looked toward the busy road. "He passed away years ago. But everything he taught me still lives here." She placed her hand over her heart. "He believed kindness always finds its way back. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday." Daniel listened quietly. "You still believe that?" "In Lagos." Felicia smiled confidently. "Especially in Lagos. If this city makes all of us stop believing in kindness." She looked around at the crowds rushing past each other. "Then what kind of people will we become?" Daniel couldn't answer. For the first time since beginning his experiment, someone had spoken words that reached deeper than appearances. Felicia stood. "I have to get home before it gets dark." She smiled warmly. "Take care of yourself. And may God keep you safe." Daniel watched her walk away before whispering almost to himself. "Thank you, my sister." Her words echoed repeatedly in his mind. "Especially in Lagos." If we all stop believing in kindness, then what are we? Before the feeling could settle, two women passing by noticed what had happened. One shook her head in disbelief. A beautiful girl like that feeding a dirty beggar. They use people like him for rituals. He'll start following her home. You can't trust mad people. Felicia stopped walking and calmly turned around. He isn't mad. He's hungry. There is a difference. The older woman scoffed. He'll repay you by stealing your handbag one day. Felicia smiled without anger. Maybe. But if that day comes, I'll only lose a handbag. She placed her hand on her chest. I won't lose my conscience. The woman stared silently as Felicia continued walking away with quiet dignity. Inside the black SUV across the street, Chuka slowly lowered his sunglasses. After nearly 3 weeks of watching strangers ignore, insult, and humiliate Daniel, he finally smiled. There is one. Daniel looked toward the disappearing figure of Felicia. A small smile appeared on his face. Yes. There is one. That evening, the atmosphere inside Felicia's modest family home was completely different. The aroma of egusi soup drifted from the kitchen while an old standing fan struggled against the evening heat. As Felicia entered, humming happily to herself, her mother, Anita, immediately noticed the excitement on her face. My daughter. Anita smiled knowingly. You are glowing. What happened? Did somebody drop money for you on the road? Felicia laughed. Something even better. I officially resumed work at Dream Chasing Limited this Monday. A real office. A real salary. My own desk. My own identification card. Anita clapped joyfully. So my daughter is now a salary woman. Felicia laughed again. A salary woman isn't a big woman, Mama. Anita leaned closer with a mischievous smile. No. A truly big woman marries a truly rich man. She lowered her voice dramatically. Speaking of which, I have news. Felicia raised an eyebrow. What news? Anita grinned proudly. Chief Badela's son. Kelvin. The one who drives those expensive cars. He has been asking about you. Mama. Felicia sighed. Real money has finally found our family. Anita continued excitedly. That family eats with gold spoons. Even Felicia's cousin, who had been listening nearby, laughed. Kelvin Badela likes Felicia. Of course he does. Everybody likes Felicia. Felicia became unusually quiet. Mama. There is someone else. Anita smiled. Oh. A man. Good. What business does he do? What car does he drive? Felicia looked down. He doesn't have anything. Not anymore. He has gone through difficult times. But. She smiled gently. His heart is good. Anita's smile disappeared instantly. What do you mean he has nothing? Felicia hesitated. He sits by the roadside. People pass him every day. But he is kind. I've never met anyone with so much dignity. Anita stood up immediately. A roadside beggar. You are talking about a beggar? Her voice rose loudly enough for everyone in the house to hear. So why Kelvin Badela is asking for my daughter's hand? You are busy feeding roadside poverty. Her cousin burst into laughter. Felicia and her beggar. What a love story. Anita pointed angrily toward the door. After everything I sacrificed to raise you. This is how you want to repay me? By bringing shame into this family. Felicia remained calm. His name is Daniel. And one day. She looked every one of them in the eyes. All of you will regret speaking about him this way. Anita shook her head. The only person who should be ashamed is you. Kelvin is coming to visit this family. You will smile. You will sit properly. And you will behave like a sensible daughter. The conversation ended there, but the silence that followed was heavier than any argument. The next morning, Felicia returned to Daniel carrying a small shopping bag. Daniel looked surprised. You cannot continue sleeping outside wearing these rags. She smiled. Please. Just try them. Moments later, inside a small clothing shop, the sales attendant admired Daniel after he changed into the new outfit. We'll take this shirt. And those trousers. She nodded approvingly. Excellent choice. Daniel stared at himself in the mirror. The handsome, confident man hidden beneath weeks of dirt slowly began to reappear. The shop attendant laughed. So this is the fine man hiding under all that dust. Daniel turned toward Felicia. His eyes were filled with gratitude. Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even have much yourself. I can see that. Felicia smiled gently. Wealth isn't measured by what we keep. It's measured by what we are willing to share. Daniel stood speechless. For nearly 3 weeks, he had searched for a genuinely kind heart among millions of people. Now, standing before him was a young woman who possessed almost nothing in material wealth. Yet was richer in compassion than anyone he had ever known. The following morning, the small room Felicia rented felt unusually quiet. Sunlight slipped through the faded curtains, casting warm rays across the worn wooden table where Daniel sat, still dressed in the clean clothes she had bought for him the previous day. Though he looked far different from the dusty beggar everyone mocked on the streets, the humility in his eyes remained unchanged. Felicia walked into the room carrying a brown envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat opposite him. Daniel. He looked up. Yes. Without another word, she placed the envelope on the table and gently pushed it toward him. Daniel frowned. What is this? Open it. He slowly untied the string around the envelope. The moment he saw the thick bundle of neatly arranged naira notes, he immediately looked back at her in disbelief. Felicia. She smiled nervously. It's 1 million naira. Daniel's eyes widened. What? It's everything I've saved. He stared at her speechlessly. I've been saving for 3 years. Every salary from my old jobs. Every little amount I could keep. I wanted to build a better future. Daniel quickly closed the envelope. No. He pushed it back toward her. I can't accept this. Felicia gently pushed it back again. You can. No. I won't. Her eyes became moist. Daniel. I believe in you. He remained silent. I don't see a beggar when I look at you. I see a man who only needs one opportunity. She leaned closer. Use it. Start a small business. Stand on your own feet again. And she smiled shyly. When you're standing, I hope you'll still want me standing beside you. Daniel looked at her for several long seconds. The room became completely silent. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. Felicia. She looked into his eyes. I'm going to marry you. She blinked in surprise before laughing softly through her tears. Was that a proposal? Or an announcement? Daniel smiled for the first time in weeks. It is a promise. And I never break my promises. Felicia lowered her head, unable to hide the smile spreading across her face. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned quietly to the black luxury SUV waiting several streets away. The moment the door closed behind him, Chuka noticed the envelope resting carefully on Daniel's lap. What is that, sir? Daniel held it gently, almost as though it were priceless treasure. 1 million naira. Chuka nearly choked. 1 million. Daniel nodded. The only savings she has. For 3 years. Chuka was speechless. She gave everything to a man she believed had absolutely nothing. Daniel looked out the window thoughtfully. Chuka. Yes, sir. There is something I need you to do. I'm listening. Felicia's late father lost a piece of family land before he died. Chuka nodded immediately. I've heard something about that. Find it. Whoever owns it now. Buy it. I don't care what it costs. And transfer everything into Felicia's name. Chuka smiled knowingly. Should I tell her who paid for it? Daniel shook his head. Never. She must never know it came from me. He gently touched the envelope again. And this? He smiled. This 1 million naira. Frame it. Chuka looked confused. Frame it. Yes. One day I'll return every naira to her. He paused. No. I'll return it multiplied by 1,000. But this envelope. He smiled quietly. I'll keep forever. It reminds me that genuine love still exists. The next day, Daniel finally returned to Dream Chasing Group headquarters for the first time in weeks. The glass doors opened automatically as executives and staff members froze in disbelief. Inside the chairman's private office, Raymond burst into laughter the moment he saw him. The great Daniel Amodi. He stood up to embrace his longtime friend. 3 weeks. Nobody could find you. Half of Lagos believes you've gone completely mad. Daniel laughed softly. Let them believe whatever they want. Raymond placed several documents on the polished mahogany desk. The merger has been signed. Daniel glanced through the papers. Dream Chasing Group is officially the biggest business empire in Nigeria. He nodded quietly. My father would have loved this. He certainly would. Raymond noticed Daniel wasn't celebrating. You've just become even more powerful. But you don't look like a man thinking about business. You look like someone whose heart is somewhere else. Daniel smiled faintly. Raymond. If a woman gave you everything she owned, believing you had nothing to give her in return, what would that be worth? Raymond didn't hesitate. More than every company we own. Daniel looked out through the office window. I found her. The woman I was searching for. Raymond smiled broadly. Then God answered your prayers. The charity gala is only 5 days away. You'll walk onto that stage as chairman before everyone who mocked you. Daniel folded his arms thoughtfully. But she still doesn't know who I really am. Raymond laughed. My friend. I know that look. You're planning something dramatic. Daniel smiled. I'm planning something better. I'm going to discover exactly what kind of family she's surrounded by. And then, I'm going to give her the life she deserves. A few moments later, Chuka hurried into the office carrying a tablet. Sir. You need to see this. Daniel accepted it. A familiar video began playing. Jessica and Cynthia's laughter echoed through the speakers. Look at him. The mighty Daniel. See him begging on the roadside. The crowd laughed. Jessica threw money onto the ground. The humiliation played out once again. Chuka looked furious. I'll have them arrested immediately. Daniel calmly switched off the video. No. They've already chosen their reward. He placed the tablet aside. Everything eventually returns to its owner. And so with this. That same evening, tension filled Felicia's family home. Mama, please. Felicia pleaded desperately. I don't want Kelvin. Her mother folded her arms stubbornly. My daughter. You don't know what you want. I do. My heart has already chosen. Anita scoffed. Your heart. Your heart is still a child. It wants sugar. But I'm your mother. I want food that will keep you alive. Felicia shook her head. Daniel is a good man. He has a beautiful heart. You can trust him. Anita laughed bitterly. Daniel. The roadside beggar. You want to marry poverty itself? My own daughter. Tears gathered in Felicia's eyes. You don't know him. I know enough. Anita's voice suddenly became emotional. I married for love too. Your father was a good man. A kind man. But kindness didn't pay hospital bills. It didn't pay school fees. When he died, he left debts instead of wealth. Her voice cracked. I've suffered every single day because of that decision. I refuse to watch you repeat my mistake. She pointed firmly toward the door. Kelvin is coming on Friday. The matter is settled. Just then, Felicia's cousin rushed inside holding a mobile phone. Mama. You have to see this. What happened? It's Felicia's Beggar. He's trending online. Everyone gathered around the phone. Jessica's viral video filled the screen. Laughter echoed throughout the sitting room. So this is the famous Daniel. Her cousin laughed uncontrollably. The whole internet is laughing at him. Anita turned slowly toward her daughter. This. She pointed angrily at the screen. This is the man you want to marry. Felicia grabbed for the phone. Turn it off. Her cousin pulled it away. No. You chose this over Kelvin Bardella. A roadside joke. Tears rolled down Felicia's cheeks. You don't know him. Anita replied coldly. We know enough. The whole of Lagos knows enough. Before anyone could speak again, the sound of an expensive SUV stopping outside interrupted the argument. A maid hurried to the window. Mama. He's here. Anita immediately straightened her wrapper. Everybody behave yourselves. The front door opened. Standing outside was Kelvin Bardella, dressed in an expensive tailored suit, wearing a luxury wristwatch that cost more than most people's annual salary. Behind him, his driver carried several beautifully wrapped gift boxes. Kelvin smiled confidently. Good evening. He stepped inside as though he already belonged there. For the most beautiful family in Lagos. He handed the gifts to Anita. A little something for the house. Anita nearly melted with excitement. Kelvin. You shouldn't have. But thank you. Please sit. Sit down. She turned quickly. Felicia. Bring cold water for our guest. Felicia obeyed silently. As she placed the glass before him, Kelvin admired her openly. They told me you were beautiful. He smiled confidently. They lied. You are even more beautiful than they described. Felicia forced a polite smile. Kelvin leaned back comfortably. I don't believe in wasting time. When I see what I want, I go after it immediately. Anita clapped happily. That is the confidence of a real man. My daughter is truly blessed. Across the room, Felicia's phone vibrated quietly. She glanced down. There were no messages from Daniel. Only silence. Her cousin noticed. Still waiting for your beggar? She whispered mockingly. You know your mother will never allow it. She looked toward Kelvin. And besides, Kelvin is rich. Kelvin is here. Felicia looked down at the untouched engagement gifts resting on the table. Outside, dark clouds slowly gathered over Lagos. A storm was coming. And before the week was over, every secret would finally be revealed. The morning of Friday arrived with an unusual stillness, but inside Anita's modest house, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Felicia stood by the window, clutching her phone tightly. She had called Daniel countless times since the previous evening. Every call went unanswered. Every message remained undelivered. Her heart grew heavier with every passing minute. Meanwhile, her cousin Cynthia leaned lazily against the doorway with a smug smile. So you're still waiting for that man who sleeps on bare concrete? Felicia turned sharply. At least Daniel knows how to love someone. Cynthia rolled her eyes. And what do you know about love? Felicia fired back without hesitation. What do you know about it? The room fell silent. Years of hidden jealousy suddenly burst to the surface. You always get everything, Cynthia shouted bitterly. The best grades in school. The first good job. Everybody likes you. And now 2 men are fighting over you. She stepped closer. Give me that phone. Felicia hugged it to her chest. No. Give it to me. I said no. In one swift movement, Cynthia snatched the phone from her hands. Cynthia. Before Felicia could stop her, Cynthia smashed the phone against the tiled floor. Crack. The screen shattered into dozens of tiny pieces. Felicia gasped. What have you done? Cynthia folded her arms proudly. I just did you a favor. She looked down at the broken phone. Now you can't reach your precious Daniel. And he can't reach you. She smacked. By the time Auntie Anita finishes today, you'll be Mrs. Bardella. You'll thank me later. Tears filled Felicia's eyes as she knelt to gather the broken pieces of her phone. A short while later, Daniel stood outside Anita's compound wearing the same simple clothes Felicia had bought for him. He knocked politely on the rusted gate. The security guard opened it halfway. Who are you looking for? I'm here to see Felicia. Daniel smiled politely. Please tell her Daniel is here. The guard's expression immediately changed. Madam already warned us. If any roadside beggar comes asking for Miss Felicia, we should chase him away. Daniel remained calm. I don't want trouble. Please. Just tell her Daniel came. The guard laughed loudly. Ogre. She has found herself a better man. A rich man. Kelvin Bardella. Go back to your gutter before we break something you still need. People passing nearby stopped to watch. Some laughed. Others pointed. Daniel lowered his head briefly before speaking again. I only wanted to see her. The guard pushed the gate wider. Get out. Madman. The gate slammed shut. Daniel remained standing quietly. Inside the black SUV parked farther down the street, Chuka clenched his fist. Sir. Say the word. I'll have every one of them arrested. Daniel slowly shook his head. Not yet. He checked his wristwatch. The time has come. He looked toward Raymond, who sat beside him. It's Friday. Raymond smiled knowingly. Everything is ready. The convoy. The documents. The gift. The media. The gala can wait. Daniel nodded. Today. Felicia needs me more. And I also want to discover exactly what Kelvin Bardella has been hiding. Raymond laughed softly. A man that flashy is almost always hiding something. Back at Anita's compound. Preparations for the traditional marriage ceremony were already underway. Colorful canopies covered the compound. Traditional drummers entertained arriving guests while women dressed in elegant Ankara outfits bustled around serving food. Expensive SUVs lined the street outside. Kelvin Bardella stood proudly among family members wearing richly embroidered agbada, smiling confidently as though victory already belonged to him. Then suddenly, Anita grabbed her chest. Her breathing became difficult. She staggered backwards. Mama! Felicia screamed. Anita collapsed onto the floor. The compound instantly erupted into panic. Some women began shouting prayers. Others screamed in fear. Nobody knew what to do. Just then, the gate burst open. Daniel rushed inside. Everybody move back. His commanding voice surprised everyone. Give her air. You. He pointed at a young man. Call an ambulance immediately. You. He turned to another guest. Bring clean water. And someone get me a clean cloth. People obeyed without thinking. Daniel knelt beside Anita. It's okay, Mama. You are not alone. Breathe slowly. You'll be fine. He gently supported her head while loosening her wrapper around the neck to help her breathe more comfortably. Within moments, Anita's breathing began to stabilize. She slowly opened her eyes. My son, she whispered weakly. Thank you. The elderly women watching nearby exchanged surprised glances. One of them shook her head. So this is the beggar everybody has been insulting. She sighed deeply. He has a better heart than all of us. The ceremony resumed shortly afterwards. Kelvin stood proudly before everyone. Today, he announced loudly, two great families become one. The Badela name is gold. Pure gold. He smiled confidently at Felicia. You've won the lottery of your life. He noticed her searching the crowd. Stop looking. Your beggar isn't coming. I'll bury you in wealth. So much wealth. You'll never remember the gutter again. Felicia looked him directly in the eyes. I don't want gold. Kelvin laughed. Everybody wants gold. He snapped his fingers. Bring the bride price. Several young men began carrying beautifully decorated boxes into the compound. The crowd cheered excitedly. Then, the loud roar of luxury engines echoed outside. Everyone turned. 1, 2, 5, 10. A convoy of black luxury vehicles rolled slowly through the gate. The compound fell silent. Security officers stepped out first. Behind them came executives dressed in expensive suits. Finally, Daniel stepped out. No longer dressed as a beggar. He wore a perfectly tailored black agbada embroidered with gold, a luxury wristwatch gleaming beneath the afternoon sun. His confidence transformed the entire atmosphere. Nobody recognized the man standing before them. Kelvin frowned. Security. Throw this madman out. Daniel smiled calmly. You broke her phone. So she would believe I abandoned her. He looked directly at Felicia. I could never abandon you. Anita stepped forward angrily. Leave my compound. You have nothing. Daniel smiled gently. You keep saying that word. Nothing. He slowly turned toward the arriving convoy. Let's find out who truly has nothing. At that moment, Raymond stepped forward. The entire crowd recognized him immediately. Whispers spread everywhere. That's Raymond Disa, the billionaire investor. What is he doing here? Raymond raised his voice. You've all been calling this man a beggar. He pointed proudly toward Daniel. Allow me to introduce him properly. This is Daniel Amodi, chairman of Dream Chasing Group, the youngest billionaire in Nigeria, the richest young businessman in this country, and the beloved son of my late best friend. The compound exploded into complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Every face froze in disbelief. Kelvin staggered backwards. Anita covered her mouth. Cynthia nearly dropped to the floor. Jessica's viral video suddenly flashed through several guests' minds. Daniel looked toward Felicia before nodding. Immediately, dozens of staff members opened the luxury vehicles. Inside were gifts beyond imagination. Traditional marriage items. Luxury fabrics. Jewelry. Livestock. Cash. Everything required for a royal bride price. Raymond smiled. This, he gestured toward the gifts, is the bride price. For the only woman in Lagos who loved Daniel Amodi when she believed he had absolutely nothing. At that very moment another familiar face pushed through the crowd. It was Samson, Felicia's arrogant supervisor from Dream Chasing Group. The moment he saw Daniel, the color disappeared from his face. Chairman, he stammered. I didn't know. Daniel looked at him calmly. Weren't you about to dismiss Felicia from her job? Samson's knees nearly gave way. No, sir. That's not what I meant. Daniel's expression hardened. No. You are the embarrassment. Not her. You are dismissed. Clear your office before tomorrow morning. Samson stood speechless as security escorted him away. Daniel slowly turned back to Felicia. His voice softened. I'm sorry. I lied to you. I spent 1 month walking the streets searching for one truly kind heart. My wealth could buy almost anything. But it could never buy genuine love. He smiled. And then, a woman wearing a simple wrapper knelt beside a stranger in the dust. You gave me food. You gave me dignity. You gave me hope. You gave me 1 million naira. Every savings you had. He nodded toward Chuka. Chuka stepped forward carrying a beautifully wrapped folder. Daniel handed it to Felicia. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were official land documents. My father's land. She whispered. Daniel smiled. It's yours again. It's back in your family's name. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. You gave me everything you had. So today. He slowly knelt before her in front of the entire gathering. Everything I have belongs to you. He gently took her hands. Felicia. Will you marry me? She laughed through tears. I would have married you. Even if you had remained that man sitting on the roadside. Daniel smiled. I know. That's exactly why it had to be you. Yes. She nodded repeatedly. Yes, Daniel. I'll marry you. The entire compound erupted into applause and joyful celebration. Then Daniel turned toward Anita with a gentle smile. You once called me a road, Mama. She lowered her eyes in shame. Roads take people to places. He looked lovingly at Felicia. I'm taking your daughter somewhere your fears never allowed you to imagine. Before anyone could respond, police vehicles drove through the gate. Officers stepped out. Their leader approached Kelvin. Kelvin Bardella. Yes. You are under arrest. What? For fraud. Forgery. And obtaining money by false pretenses. Kelvin's confidence disappeared instantly. This must be a mistake. He looked desperately at his father. Dad. Do something. Chief Bardella slowly stepped backwards. I know nothing about my son's business. Nothing. Handcuffs clicked shut around Kelvin's wrist. As officers escorted him away, Raymond leaned toward Daniel. You were right. A man that flashy is usually hiding something. Daniel watched quietly. His gold was borrowed. His empire was built on paper. And paper always burns. He finally faced the stunned guests gathered around the compound. You all looked at a man sitting on the roadside. And saw nothing. Felicia stepped beside him and held his hand. I looked at him. She smiled. And I saw a human being. That. She glanced around the silent crowd. Is the only difference between us. She turned lovingly toward her mother. You once said money is like sugar. It can rot your teeth. She smiled warmly. You were right, Mama. I simply chose the one treasure that never rots. A good heart. Around the compound, whispers of regret filled the air. Jessica lowered her head in shame. Cynthia couldn't bring herself to speak. Neighbors stared at one another in disbelief. So, one elderly woman whispered. The beggar on the roadside. That was Daniel Amodi all along. Another shook her head slowly. We judged a man's clothes. And almost missed the greatest blessing that ever walked through this community. The afternoon sun shone brightly over the celebrating crowd as drums began to play once again, not for wealth, not for status, but for a love that had been tested by poverty, proven by kindness, and rewarded beyond anyone's imagination. The tension inside Anita's house had reached its breaking point. Felicia stood near the window with tears streaming down her cheeks, desperately trying to call Daniel again. Every attempt ended the same way, her calls refused to connect. She gripped the phone tightly, praying he would somehow answer. Across the room, her cousin Cynthia watched with folded arms and a smug smile. "So you're still chasing that man who sleeps on bare cement?" she mocked. "After everything Mama has told you." Felicia wiped away her tears and faced her. "At least Daniel knows how to love someone." Cynthia laughed sarcastically. "And what do you know about love? What do you know about it?" Felicia shot back without hesitation. The words hit Cynthia like a slap. Years of jealousy she had hidden deep inside finally exploded. "You always get everything," Cynthia shouted. "You were always the best student. You got the first good job. Everybody praises you wherever you go. And now 2 men are fighting over you while nobody even notices me." She stepped forward angrily. "Give me that phone." Felicia hugged it tightly against her chest. "No. I said give it to me." "No." In one swift movement, Cynthia snatched the phone from her hands. "Cynthia, stop." Before anyone could react, Cynthia raised the phone high into the air and smashed it against the tiled floor. Crash! The screen shattered into hundreds of tiny pieces. Felicia stared at the broken phone in disbelief. "What have you done?" Cynthia shrugged carelessly. "I've done you a favor." She smiled wickedly. "Now you can't call Daniel. And Daniel can't call you." She turned toward Anita with satisfaction. "By the time Auntie finishes arranging everything, you'll already be Mrs. Kelvin Bardella. You'll thank me one day." Felicia dropped to her knees, gathering the broken pieces of her phone as tears rolled silently down her face. Meanwhile, Daniel arrived outside Anita's compound carrying only a small paper bag in his hand. He was still dressed in the simple clothes Felicia had bought for him, determined to keep the promise he had made to her. He knocked politely on the iron gate. A security guard opened it slightly. "Who are you looking for?" "I'm here to see Felicia." Daniel smiled respectfully. "Please tell her Daniel is here." The guard frowned immediately. "Madam gave us strict instructions. If any beggar comes asking for Miss Felicia, we should show him the road." Daniel remained calm. "I don't want any trouble. Just tell her I came." The guard laughed loudly. "Oga, forget that girl. She has already found herself a better man. A rich man. Kelvin Bardella. Go back to your gutter before we break something that still works in your body." Several neighbors nearby burst into laughter. Daniel lowered his eyes briefly. "I only wanted to see her." The guard pointed toward the road. "Get out of here, madman." The heavy gate slammed shut in his face. For a few moments Daniel stood there silently, staring at the closed gate. Across the street, Chuka watched everything from the black SUV. His blood boiled with anger. "Sir, just say the word. I'll remove every one of them from that house." Daniel shook his head calmly. "Not yet." He looked at his wristwatch. "It's Friday." He turned toward Raymond, who sat beside Chuka. "It's time." Raymond nodded. "The convoy is ready. The gifts are ready. The legal documents are ready. The media team is waiting." Daniel smiled faintly. "The charity gala can wait. Today, Felicia needs me. And I also want to know what Kelvin Bardella is hiding." Raymond laughed knowingly. A man who shines too brightly usually has something to hide. Back inside Anita's compound, preparations for the traditional marriage introduction had begun. Colorful canopies covered the compound while talking drums echoed through the neighborhood. Women dressed in matching Ankara outfits moved from one corner to another serving food to the growing crowd. Kelvin Badella stood proudly in an expensive white abaya embroidered with gold thread. Around his wrist glittered a luxury watch worth millions of naira. He smiled confidently as relatives praised him. Suddenly, Anita clutched her chest. She gasped for breath. Her body became weak before collapsing onto the ground. "Mama!" Felicia screamed. The celebration instantly turned into chaos. Some elderly women began shouting prayers. Others screamed that it was a spiritual attack. Nobody knew what to do. Just then, Daniel pushed through the crowd. Everybody moved back. His voice carried such authority that everyone instinctively obeyed. "Give her space to breathe. You," he pointed toward one young man, "call an ambulance. You," he turned to another woman, "bring clean water and a clean cloth." Within seconds everyone was following his instructions. Daniel knelt beside Anita. "It's all right, Mama. You are not alone. Breathe slowly." He gently supported her head while loosening her wrapper around her neck. Gradually Anita's breathing became steady again. She slowly opened her eyes. "My son," she whispered weakly. "Thank you." An elderly woman watching nearby shook her head in amazement. "So this is the beggar everybody has been insulting," she sighed deeply. "This young man has a better heart than all of us." A little later, after Anita recovered, the ceremony continued. Kelvin stood proudly before the gathering. "Today," he announced confidently, "two great families become one. The Badella name is gold in this state. Pure gold." He looked proudly at Felicia. "You have won the biggest lottery of your life." He noticed her eyes searching the crowd. "Stop looking. Your beggar isn't coming. I'll bury you in wealth. You'll never remember poverty again." Felicia looked straight into his eyes. "I don't want gold." Kelvin laughed loudly. "Everybody wants gold." He snapped his fingers. "Bring the bride price." Young men immediately began carrying beautifully decorated boxes into the compound as guests clapped excitedly. Just then, the loud sound of luxury engines echoed outside. Everyone turned toward the gate. One black SUV entered. Then another. Then another. Soon more than a dozen luxury vehicles rode into the compound. The music stopped. Conversation ceased. Security officers stepped out first. Then senior executives dressed in expensive suits. Finally, Daniel stepped out of the last vehicle. He was no longer dressed like a beggar. He wore a perfectly tailored navy blue agbada with gold embroidery, polished shoes, and a quiet confidence that commanded everyone's attention. The entire compound fell silent. Kelvin frowned. "Security. Throw this madman out." Daniel ignored him and walked straight toward Felicia. "They broke your phone." His voice was gentle. "So you would think I abandoned you?" He smiled warmly. "I would never abandon you." Anita stepped forward angrily. "Leave my compound. You have nothing. My daughter is marrying a Badella." Daniel smiled calmly. "You keep repeating that word. Nothing." He slowly turned toward the convoy behind him. "Today, let's discover who truly has nothing." Raymond stepped forward. Gasps spread through the crowd as many guests recognized one of Nigeria's most respected businessmen. "That's Raymond Disa. What is he doing here?" Raymond raised his voice so everyone could hear. "You have all been calling this man a beggar." He placed a respectful hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Allow me to introduce him properly. This is Daniel Amodi, chairman of Dream Chasing Group, the youngest billionaire in Nigeria, the richest young entrepreneur in this country, and the son of my late best friend." A deafening silence swept across the compound. No one could believe what they had just heard. Jessica lowered her head in shame. Cynthia covered her mouth. Anita staggered backwards. Kelvin's smile disappeared instantly. At Daniel's signal, staff members opened the vehicles. Inside were luxury gifts, traditional marriage items, expensive fabrics, jewelry, livestock, and neatly packed boxes filled with cash. Raymond smiled proudly. This is the bride price. For the only woman in Lagos who loved Daniel Amodi when she believed he had absolutely nothing. At that very moment, another familiar face appeared from the crowd. It was Samson, Felicia's arrogant department manager. The moment he recognized Daniel, fear covered his face. Chairman. You were about to dismiss Felicia from her job, weren't you? Daniel asked calmly. Samson trembled. No, sir. Daniel interrupted him. No. You are the embarrassment. Not her. You are dismissed. Clear your office before tomorrow morning. Security immediately escorted the stunned manager away. Daniel then turned back to Felicia. His expression softened. I'm sorry. I lied to you. I spent 1 month living as a poor man because I wanted to find one truly good heart. I found yours. You gave me food. You gave me dignity. You believed in me. You even gave me your life savings. He nodded toward Chuka. Chuka stepped forward carrying a leather folder. Daniel handed it to Felicia. She opened it slowly. Her hands began trembling. My father's land. She whispered. Daniel smiled. It's yours again. I bought it back. It has been transferred into your name. Fresh tears filled Felicia's eyes. Daniel gently held both of her hands. You gave me everything you had. So today, everything I have belongs to you. He slowly knelt before her in front of the entire gathering. Felicia, will you marry me? She laughed through tears. I would have married you even if you had remained the man sitting by the roadside. Daniel smiled. I know. That's exactly why it had to be you. She nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes, Daniel. I'll marry you. Cheers erupted throughout the compound. Daniel then turned toward Anita. You once called me a road. He smiled gently. Roads take people to beautiful places. I'm taking your daughter somewhere your fears could never imagine. Before the celebration could continue, police vehicles suddenly drove into the compound. Officers stepped out carrying official documents. Kelvin Bardella. Yes. You are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and obtaining money by false pretenses. Kelvin froze. This must be a mistake. He turned desperately toward his father. Dad. Help me. Chief Bardella slowly stepped backwards. I know nothing about his business. Nothing. The officers placed handcuffs on Kelvin as shocked guests watched in disbelief. Raymond quietly leaned toward Daniel. You were right. A man who shines too brightly usually hides something. Daniel nodded. His gold was borrowed. His empire was built on lies. And lies always collapse. He looked around at everyone gathered there. You all looked at a man sitting on the roadside. And saw nothing. Felicia smiled as she squeezed his hand. I looked at him. And I saw a human being. That was the only difference. She turned toward her mother. Mama. You once told me money is like sugar. It can rot your teeth. She smiled warmly. You were right. I simply chose the one thing that never rots. A good heart. Silence filled the compound as everyone realized how badly they had judged Daniel. The same man they mocked. The same man they chased away. The same man they called a beggar. Had been the richest young businessman in Nigeria all along. But in the end, Daniel hadn't won because he was rich. He won because, even when the whole world treated him like nothing, One woman chose to see the person behind the rags, and that single act of kindness changed both of their lives forever. The golden evening sun stretched across the Lagos skyline as the celebration slowly settled into joyful laughter. Traditional drummers continued to beat their talking drums while women danced gracefully in colorful Ankara wrappers. Children ran around the compound, laughing without a care in the world, and neighbors who had once mocked Daniel now stood quietly, their heads bowed in shame. Daniel and Felicia stood hand in hand beneath a beautifully decorated canopy. Around them were family members, friends, company executives, and community elders, all witnesses to a story no one could have imagined just a few weeks earlier. Daniel looked around the crowd before speaking. His voice was calm, yet every word carried deep emotion. I tested an entire city. The crowd fell completely silent. I walked through the busiest streets of Lagos. I sat on cold pavements. I slept on bare concrete. I stretched out my hand, not because I needed money, but because I wanted to know if kindness still existed. He paused for a moment. I wasn't searching for someone who admired wealth. I wasn't searching for someone who respected expensive clothes. I was searching for one good heart. His eyes slowly turned toward Felicia. And I found it. He smiled warmly. You never knew who I was. You never asked how much money I had. You never cared where I came from. The only thing you knew was that a hungry man was sitting by the roadside. And you chose to feed him. Felicia's eyes filled with tears. Daniel gently held both of her hands. You didn't feed a billionaire. You fed a stranger. You didn't help me because you expected a reward. You helped me because kindness was already part of who you are. The guests listened quietly as many wiped tears from their eyes. Daniel continued. I have spent my whole life building companies. I have bought houses. I have bought luxury cars. I have signed billionaire contracts. I believed success meant collecting more. He looked around thoughtfully. But during those few weeks on the streets, I discovered something I had never truly understood. I owned billions. Yet I was poorer than the young woman who willingly gave away her last 1 million naira. He looked proudly at Felicia. She had almost nothing. But she possessed compassion. She possessed integrity. She possessed a heart that money can never buy. He smiled gently. That is real wealth. The crowd erupted into heartfelt applause. Daniel raised his hand, asking for silence once more. Money can purchase comfort. It can build beautiful houses. It can buy powerful cars. It can even buy respect. But it can never buy genuine kindness. It can never buy true love. And it can never create a good heart. He turned completely toward Felicia. You are the richest person I have ever met. Fresh tears rolled down Felicia's cheeks. She smiled through them. I would do it again. Daniel looked surprised. She nodded confidently. If I met you 100 times, and every single time you were sitting on that roadside, I would still buy you akara. I would still give you water. I would still sit beside you. I would still choose kindness. Daniel laughed softly. I know. That's why I chose you. He gently wiped away her tears. But one promise. She smiled. What promise? You never have to feed me while I'm sleeping on concrete again. The guests burst into laughter. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. From today, you have a home. You have a family. You have a future. And every dream you once sacrificed for others, we'll build it together. The applause grew louder. Mama Anita slowly walked toward the couple. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She stopped before Daniel. My son. She struggled to speak. I judged you by what my eyes could see. I forgot that God often hides greatness inside ordinary clothing. She turned toward her daughter. Forgive me. I was trying to protect you. I almost destroyed your happiness instead. Felicia embraced her mother tightly. I already forgave you, Mama. Daniel smiled. Families make mistakes. What matters is choosing love when the truth finally appears. Nearby, Cynthia slowly approached with trembling hands. She lowered her head. I was jealous. I allowed envy to make me cruel. I'm sorry. Felicia gently hugged her cousin. We all have another chance. Let's not waste it. Even Jessica and the neighbors who had laughed at Daniel stepped forward one after another to apologize. Daniel accepted every apology with humility. I didn't come here to shame anyone. I came to remind all of us of something. He looked around the gathering. The clothes people wear can deceive you. The cars they drive can deceive you. The houses they live in can deceive you. But the way someone treats another human being, that never lies. Raymond stepped forward smiling proudly. My friend. I think your father would be smiling today. Daniel looked up toward the evening sky. I hope so. He always told me. If you want to know someone's true character, watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. Daniel smiled. He was right. Later that evening, as fireworks illuminated the Lagos sky, Daniel led Felicia toward the waiting convoy. One final surprise remained. The gates of a magnificent mansion slowly opened before them. The beautifully landscaped gardens glowed beneath rows of elegant lights. Felicia stood frozen. Daniel placed a small set of keys into her hand. Welcome home. She looked at him in disbelief. Our home. Daniel nodded. Our home. But remember. He smiled warmly. This house isn't the greatest gift I can give you. She looked into his eyes. What is? Daniel gently kissed her forehead. My trust. My respect. My heart. They've belonged to you since the day you knelt beside a hungry stranger with nothing but a bag of akara and a bottle of pure water. Felicia laughed softly through happy tears. And my heart has belonged to you since the day you thanked me as though I had given you the whole world. Daniel smiled. You did. As the evening breeze carried the sound of music through the air, family and friends gathered around the couple, celebrating not the wealth of a billionaire, but the victory of kindness over pride, compassion over greed, and true love over appearances. From that day forward, Daniel and Felicia used their fortune to establish charities, provide scholarships for struggling students, support widows, empower small business owners, and feed thousands of hungry families across Nigeria. Every year, on the anniversary of the day they met, they returned to the same roadside where Daniel had once sat disguised as a beggar. Together, they served akara and meals to anyone in need. Whenever people asked why they never forgot that little corner of Lagos, Daniel would simply smile and say, "This is where I stopped searching for wealth and found the richest treasure God could ever give me." Beside him, Felicia would squeeze his hand and quietly add, "Good people are always rewarded." And together they proved that the greatest riches in life are never measured by money, but by the kindness we show to people when they have nothing to offer us in return. To be continued.